Serge, tell us a little bit more about the thing that you're recently doing, which is converting hotels to multifamily. That's really interesting. Well, first of all, is this opportunity been around for a long time, or was it maybe made possible through COVID or accelerated? Talk to us a little bit about the opportunity.
Well, the opportunity has been around for a long time, and I had been preparing for a number of years. It's not something that we just jumped into lightly. Um, the opportunity, let me back up. The opportunity was not around because hotel valuations were so high pre 2000, let's call it 18, 17. So you could buy multifamily cheaper, quality multifamily cheaper than a hotel. Hotel cap rates were 5, 6%. They were low and you were running a business. So why go through all the hassle when you can passively buy a multifamily, let your property manager come in, do your plan, and make money while you sleep, right? So why would you even look at a hotel? But come around 2018, 19, with the run up in multifamily became so expensive where it got to the point where, I was underwriting and walking these deals and the real estate was junk, right? So I'm sitting here saying, okay, now I got to pay stuff I used to buy for 40 a door that I was renting for 900. Now I got to pay 100 a door and rent it for 1,000, right? So it was really hard for me to get around that. And in 2018, 19, I became less bullish on the market. It felt like it had run its course. And I probably would have sat on the sidelines with multifamily for a while because that was my position, that prices were overinflated. I think COVID, in essence, bailed us out in that regard, multifamily wise. I think we were really getting frothy. And so at that point in time, I started looking at, for fun, really. I had a couple of brokers that were friends of mine, hotel brokers, and said, "Hey, look at this deal." And I said, I'm not a hotel guy. I'm a multifamily guy. Why would I look at this deal?" Well, no, this one has all kitchens. It would make a great multifamily. And I started looking at it and realized that the hotels were trading still at a fairly low cap, but on its business income, on its NOI. And what sets hotels apart is that there is a lot of really bad operators in the motel space, in the hotel space. There's a lot of really bad operators, and there is a lack of competent property managers, right? So you look at the hotel space, 95% of these guys are self-managing their assets, okay? And probably half or more of those guys are out of state, right? And the majority of those guys have 5 to 10 hotels, right? So they're operating I started underwriting these assets and looking at 100-unit hotels, and it didn't matter the quality, right? It could have been a Marriott or a Hilton, and they're doing on 100 units, they're doing 300,000 NOI. And I'm sitting there saying, a 100-unit apartment complex, I'm doing a lot better than 300 NOI, and they're doing 300 NOI on 2 million top line. So I'm saying, God, there's a lot of inefficiencies here. Could this work for multifamily? So I started researching the zoning and the permitting and what it looked like in different cities. And again, these were a lot of barriers to entry, which I like, right? So pre-COVID, actually, I was able to get the first one in contract, which was very difficult. I had been making offers on probably 5 to 6, maybe more pre-COVID. And not being in the hotel space, I just couldn't get these brokers to take me seriously. There were still a lot of buyers, and they're just like, you're a multifamily guy. What are you going to do with this? Do you have the debt? I couldn't get them around. So they were basically using me to set a floor on the price, like they do with inexperienced multifamily guys. The guy that swoops in from California, owns no assets in your state, and he thinks he's going to get a good deal, right? They're going to use him as a floor for the real buyer. That was happening to me. So there's a lot of frustration. And then finally, I made some inroads with a broker. The perfect asset came up. It was a 70 unit in a market I was already in, had all kitchens. Half of them were true 1 bedrooms, and it was in a market that was very easy permitting wise. And so I went very aggressive on my offer, still almost lost it. They still used me as a floor, and I just went aggro on the broker. I'm all, dude, I know what you're doing. What price do I got to pay? I want this to stick. I want to prove that doing deals with me is easy. And I got that deal. And that deal was in what was it? It was in February 2019, and it was supposed to February 2020, and it was supposed to close in March, by the end of March 2020. So you know what happened in March 2020. All of a sudden, Corona breaks out, and Hilton's share price dumps 75%. And I'm sitting here telling the broker, how am I supposed to pay? What makes you think that the value of this 70 unit hasn't gone down when, the most storied brand names in America are off 70%? So there's going to be a retrade. And I know, and I'm not a retrader. I pride that, when I make a deal, price, it sticks. But in this case, I actually took the leap of faith, bought it with a retrade that was about 15% off the purchase price. The owner at that point just wanted out. He was out of state, purchased it, did the entitlements, brought in a multifamily property manager, implemented a system, which I had been dabbling with as far as property management software, and kind of doing this hybrid of multifamily. Because when you buy a hotel asset to convert to a multifamily, it's going to take a regular property manager it's going to take them months and months to lease it up. It just doesn't happen quickly. They operate on property manager time. So I found the most efficient way to do that was to operate it as a quote unquote Airbnb, really a short-term rental, and then give the property manager units to slowly lease up. So you keep the revenue flowing. And we had learned how to do this because we had been operating Airbnbs in all of our multifamilies since 2012, since Airbnb started, right? So we had been operating, figuring out, what furniture to use, how to remodel for that target class compared to the multifamily segment, what property management software to use, what locks to use, how to do this. And so by the time we did it, we were fully prepared.
What's some of the biggest challenge that you had to undergo when you got into this? You talked about getting the permitting and the zoning. What are some of the things that someone thinking about is, oh, Serge, this is great, I'm going to get into it tomorrow. Like, what are some of the things that people need to be aware of?
It's definitely not for everybody. There's so many little things that you wouldn't think of. The big one is property management. And that continues to be a big challenge. A traditional multifamily property manager, and we all know them. I mean, some are good, some are not that great. It kind of depends on the regional you're going to get, right? You get a good regional, your asset's going to kick ass. You get a bad regional, your asset's going to tank, right? But asking them to do something that's outside of their comfort zone, outside of their process, a lot simply won't do it. They'll say, these, because the short-term guests are very, very picky, and you live or die by those reviews, right? On a long-term multifamily, when I have a 200-unit multifamily, I don't really care what Google reviews says, because you can pick any of these multifamilies and they all have bad Google reviews, right? They all suck. You could mismanage your 200-unit and still have a 2x multiple on the back end, right? There's so many ways to screw it up and still win. If you're good at remodeling, if you can make it look good on the outside, if you can raise rents on 10% of the units, right, you'll make a lot of money. And if you buy right, the three things that deal junkies need to be good at: you got to buy right, you got to remodel right, and you got to know your underwriting, right? If you could do those three, but you can't operate you don't have a good property manager, you'll still make money. But in the short-term game, it's all about operations, right? You can find deals, but if you can't operate it, right, you're not going to make money. If you stack up bad reviews, nobody's going to go there. So the operations are the biggest challenge, where for multifamily, there's still a challenge, but they're a lot easier to work your way through it. And you have a longer timeline. You can work your way, you can stumble through it over a year, get it right. It could take you a year and a half, 2 years to get it right. But once you do, you've created that exit, you've created that value, right? Whereas in short term, you always got to have it right. You can never take your foot off the wheel, but the reward is cash flow. The reward is cash flow, right? And exit, because if you've given the next guy if you've shown him how it can be a multifamily, you've now created a multifamily exit, which is 2x the hotel exit today.